Welcome to Chat with Sonlight, a homeschool podcast. Spend a few minutes each week catching up with Sonlight. Connect with other homeschoolers for encouragement, tips, and fellowship from around the globe. Plus, we'll explore some of the behind-the-scenes happenings at Sonlight and take a deep dive into your favorite homeschool products. Each week, we'll chat with Sonlighters just like you, new homeschoolers, homeschool bloggers, Sonlight employees and advisors, veteran homeschoolers, and even Sarita Holtzman. Like Sonlight's curriculum offerings, we will explore homeschooling through the lens of a literature-based Christ-centered education. Join us for everything you might be interested in, from organizing your homeschool, connecting with others, and details on literature-based learning.
Hi, Sunny from Sonlight here. Thanks for joining me on our Sonlight Connections podcast. I wanted to introduce you to one of my colleagues, Johna. You may know Johna from conventions or some of the other Sonlight events, but she has been working with me behind the scenes on our Sonlight Connections podcast the entire time I have been hosting episodes. And we are going to bring her in for some new episodes as the host. We are going to shift our format a little bit, try something new, and give you, our audience, more of what you're looking for. So Johna, welcome. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about you?
Hi, I'm Johna Lawrence. You guys probably have met me or have seen me on videos when we've talked with mentors. I have been using Sonlight for many years. I've been in the marketing department though with Sonlight for a little over a year now, working full time. My kids are gone. They're not gone. They are fully functioning adults in the world. They've graduated. They have gone from my homeschool. But we homeschooled all four of them from kindergarten up through graduation. So I am a naturally nosy homeschool mom, and Sonlight is my passion, and talking to homeschool moms is another passion. So I think having a chat that gets to go behind scenes and look at Sonlight and how they do things or what's going on is just a natural fit for me. So
yeah, so let's talk about this behind the scenes, this chat with Sonlight that we want to bring about for our audience. Can you tell them more of what that's going to look like?
So one of the things that I would like to see is just a chat with different Sonlight moms. It could be, we've had Sonlight Spotlight before, but this time just chatting with one-on-one with moms on what's going on in their life, maybe something that makes them unique that you might want to know about. So if you know of a family, you need to let us know. But if you think you're a unique family, I would like to know. I was thinking families that are in different scenarios, missionaries, families that have just single child, maybe a foster family, just the different scenarios in life that we have behind scenes for Sonlight. Have you ever wondered what goes behind the scenes to get your package to you? Maybe we could see what the warehouse looks like. What about some of our unit studies? What goes into those and how they're put together? Maybe we could talk to the authors of those different unit studies and how they went about picking those books or those activities. I love to know the behind the scenes of things.
Yeah, I think that's going to be super exciting. I know for me personally, one of my favorite things about working for Sonlight now, after being a longtime Sonlight mom, is kind of getting a sneak peek into what's coming in the future as well. So I think that's going to be great for people to see, the behind the scenes of what products are in development or what is coming out in the new year. And like you said, talking to the authors of those various products. We have an amazing team who, takes the feedback we get from our Sonlighters to turn that into new innovative unit studies and brand new products in our curriculum. Another feature that we're going to include in our Chat with Sonlight podcast is a monthly segment with Sarita Holtzman, the president and founder of Sonlight Curriculum. She has chosen so many books for our Sonlight kids over the years that have been included in the curriculum, but she is an avid reader and reads all the time. So I will be talking to her typically about once a month. We'll see, depending on her schedule, both talking about why certain books are a part of Sonlight curriculum, but then also finding out what she's reading now and what she recommends for our Sonlight adults, the parents who are teaching these kids. We know that many of you are drawn to Sonlight because you love to read. But oftentimes it's hard to figure out what books you want to read. There's so many recommendations, so many new releases out there. But Sarita is such a trusted voice when it comes to identifying outstanding books. And so I'm going to talk to her about that and find out, what is she reading? What does she suggest for us as adults as well? So that's also going to be a part of our Chat with Sonlight feature. Like I said, hopefully once a month. Anything else that you would like to add, Johna, as far as what other types of content we're going to include or we would like to create?
I would like to add that maybe you can connect with us either with the chat that's in the podcast, or you can send an email to connections@sonlight.com. And Sunny and I both will be watching for those emails so we can respond to you and take your ideas. We really like for this to be driven by your ideas and things you want to see, not necessarily what we think you want to see, but what you want. So if you think, no matter how crazy of an idea it is, we want to know what those are. So if it's how I can use my ASP with my first grader and my third grader, yes, we could talk that way. Or we could talk about maybe specific books, or we can talk about just how you homeschool and keep your kids at the table and keep sanity in life. So those are all things to talk about, but things that always make me curious, like, what about the film crew that does Discover and Do videos? Could we hear about them? Could we, how do they make their videos? Maybe what's coming down the pike? Maybe a math program, and maybe we can demo actually using math programs or using their manipulatives. Just let us know, because we just want this to be what you want to know, and I want to chat with you about it. I want it to be very informal, where we have a conversation. So like I could ask Sunny, how did you become a Sonlighter and why did you choose it? And what's one favorite thing about using Sonlight?
Yeah. So do you want me to answer that?
Sure.
Sure. Okay, perfect. So I actually first discovered Sonlight as a student. My mom came home one day and said, "We're going to homeschool you next year." And I was attending a private Christian school at the time, and it seemed very surprising. And why is this happening? What are we doing? And I remember her going to a homeschool convention that at the time, I think it was at our church, maybe, or it feels like it was. I remember walking around at booths, I think at our church. But while she was there, she discovered Sonlight. And when she saw that it was based on literature, and I had been, since I learned to read, I've loved to read. I was always the biggest reader in my family growing up, and would go to and from school reading a book the whole time. And there's photos of me on the beach when I was 7 years old reading a book. And so she knew that that was going to be a good fit for me. And then history has always been my favorite subject. And so we did what is now the equivalent of level 100, although the books have changed dramatically since I was a student. And we only homeschooled that 1 year. I ended up going back to school after that, went to private school again, and then finished at a public high school. But when it was time for my daughter to enter preschool, we had just moved and we were renting and looking at buying a home and not sure where we were going to live. So I was kind of at that point of trying to figure out, where is she going to go to school? Is she going to change schools? What are we doing? Because I really thought at that point I was going to put her in school. But I looked at her and I was like, well, I can teach you numbers. I can teach you colors. I can teach you, how to write your name, like all of the basic preschool stuff. So I just went out and did a Google search to see if Sonlight sold preschool. And sure enough, they did. We did it that 1 year and fell in love with it. The next year, I was like, I can keep going with this. Let's do pre-K. But of course, I'm going to put her in school in kindergarten because that's what normal people do. But of course, she learned so much that year that I knew at that point, oh no, I think I want to try elementary school. And by second or third grade, I felt that if I put her in school, we were going to lose so much of the great progress she had made academically, but also personality wise. She was incredibly confident. She was very open with us and just thriving. And so at that point, I knew, okay, we're going to keep doing this. I had my son, 5 years after she was born. And so we kept going with him as well. And now that she's 13, there's no way, I can't imagine putting her in school at this point. I'm like, nope, we are going all the way through graduation. I love Sonlight. I love the books. I love how it's already fully planned for me. I've also always worked while I homeschooled. And so having those instructors' guides there and available to me to tell me exactly what she needs to know, and now my son, what he needs to know, has made it so easy to teach them both, despite the fact that they are very different learners and have very different personalities. And I'm seeing this passion for reading developing in both of my kids, which, as somebody who always loved to read myself, that's so important to me, that they be well-read kids. And so, yeah, I can't imagine, like I said, ever sending them to school now. I feel like that would limit these opportunities that they've had, because they've been homeschooled with Sonlight.
As you were talking, I never did the math. You and I have talked several times, never did the math that your kids are 5 years apart.
Oh, really? Yeah.
So
Well,
I'm like, oh, that explains why they always do separate packages, because you can't really put 5 years apart in the same package. It's like my kids from oldest to youngest were 9 years apart. So there was always at least a couple that were together. So the most I ever did was 3 different packages, but 2 were still together, and they were at high school level. So I was able to, like, here's your stuff. Let's go do it. Bye. And then I would work with the other one. So yeah. Crazy. Yeah. So my husband told me we would homeschool. I did not want to homeschool. And I wanted to show that my kids, I couldn't homeschool, but I had a friend that homeschooled, and I asked her, I said, so Mike says we're going to homeschool. How do you do that? And she says, oh, just order this. And it was the K. Back then we called it cores. They're no longer called cores, but I ordered K from Sonlight, having no clue what I was doing. And so that's how I started homeschooling, trying to prove I couldn't homeschool. And, Sonlight is just that easy that I, reluctantly, 23 years later, I'm now very avidly homeschooling. And we've always been in co-ops. I've always had some sort of a part-time job. I did not work full-time in last year, but that's okay. I know the struggle of trying to juggle work and do school with your kids, having multiple packages, having the days ins and out, the days your kid doesn't want to sit at the table. In fact, I have a day that I've been thinking it was the oldest one that was duct taped to the chair. They just recently got together and told me the whole story. It was the youngest one that was duct taped to the chair. I had left the house for a minute. My parents lived next door, my next door neighbors, and I walked out to go get something from my mom or something and come back. My kids were old. The oldest ones were old enough to be in charge. The youngest one was in school, so obviously they were like 12, 13, 14. As the oldest one, the youngest one was 5 or 6, and he begged to be duct taped to the chair, and they duct taped him to the chair with his arms down. And he's like, I strategically put my arms down so I couldn't do school. So yeah, I know the struggles when your kids are doing crazy things. So I feel like I've lived them all, and I've moved, I've changed, brought kids into a new environment while homeschooling. Life changes. So yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
So,
well, and your story about your son made me think about like school for little boys. I thought I knew it all because I had the daughter first. And then, when I think about little boys and the things that they have to go through to sit still in a classroom versus when you homeschool, if they want to be duct taped to a chair, if they want to be standing on their head, whatever it is, they can still learn. And so, yeah, I love that you bring that up, because that was something. Now I'm like, oh, it's so awful that we put 5-year-old boys in a classroom and tell them they have to hold still all day long, because that's just
they just need to wiggle.
Yeah, that does not make sense for them.
And the same one that got duct taped, he's my last one that just graduated, and he still couldn't handle, like, he doesn't like being confined. I mean, he works full time now. He has his own office. It's crazy that he's that mature, but he likes to get out in the warehouse and do stuff at his job, because he's like, I don't like having to be in the office all day. I like getting out and picking things and doing things. So yeah, they don't change a whole lot, let me tell you.
but they're launched, they're successful adults now, right? So
They
you
are.
give me hope, and others at Sonlight who have grown kids, I'm like, okay, it's all gonna work out, even in those days
Yep.
where it feels like it may not.
So, I mean, true story, last night, he texted me on his way home. He's still at home. But he pays all his own way. But he texted me, he goes, "Hey, I'm in the mood for Chick-fil-A. Would you like for me just to pick you up some too, so you don't have to cook?" And I'm like, yeah, please do.
Any day you don't have to cook is a good day.
I was like, but I didn't have to think. He initiated it. He paid it, and it was great. It was the best Chick-fil-A I've had in a long time. So, Sunny, is there anything else you think we need to cover on our chat here?
I don't think so. Yeah, I think just send us your suggestions, like Johna said, at connections@sonlight.com. You can also, reach out to us in our Sonlight app or on Facebook. In all of our Sonlight Connections places, we are both available and excited to, talk to you, learn more about what you're doing, help you troubleshoot things, and then kind of give you that inside peek into Sonlight. Yeah, and like Johna said, really casual. If you have a situation you want to discuss or know someone who's dealing with something, we would be happy to talk about it and really help you on your homeschool journey.
I look forward to hearing from all of you guys, and I can't wait to have you here in Sunny's spot chatting with me. That would be the other thing. We're going to do a video. It will be a video podcast from here on out. So we're looking forward to seeing your smiling faces and letting you join part of the Sonlight family.
Yeah, absolutely. And Johna, real quick, that made me think of something with the video option. We can really show you things as well. So you mentioned earlier math manipulatives, or if there's anything you want to see that, we've told you about, but you're not quite sure what that looks like, let us know, because we can show you on the podcast as well.
Very excited. Bye. I hope you guys have a great week. I look forward to seeing your suggestions, and I'll be back next week.
Thank you for joining us today. Do you have an idea for a podcast topic, or do you want to chat with Sonlight on an upcoming episode? Email us at connections@sonlight.com.